So I've been thinking about this question a lot, and I've been thinking, what if someone handed me the keys to a recruitment agency tomorrow? What's the first thing that I would change? And this is not because a lot of the recruiters I see or have spoken to are not good, but I just feel like they spend a lot of their recruiting talent on repetitive work. So let's look at what I would change if I were to, start or buy a recruitment agency. So let's start off with what my philosophy is. So my philosophy is very simple. I have a list of things that recruiters should spend their time on and things that recruiters shouldn't spend their time on. Number one on that list, the things that recruiters should spend their time on is building deep relationships with candidates. So when a candidate comes in, get to know that candidate on a personal level. What do they speak like? What's their accent? What's their beliefs and all of that, so that when the job comes, you can instantly say, okay, we have matched the CV, this candidate's CV to this job. But what about the person's soft skills, the person's other skills that were not on the CV? And you wouldn't know that if you don't have a relationship with that candidate. But that is what you should spend your time on, building relationships with this candidate. Number two is understanding true clients' requirements. So, and you can do that when you are talking to these clients more often. Get to organize a meeting with them and speak to them, so that as a recruiter, you will clearly understand what they are looking for, the things that they have not written down that they're actually looking for. Sometimes some people might not want to, some clients might not want to write down some, requirements, but they have it in their head and they keep looking for that requirement in that person. So it's good that you understand what they're actually looking for and you know this. And the next thing that recruiters should spend time on is conducting high value final interviews. So of course, when we finally scan and screen these candidates and get our qualified candidates, recruiters should spend time interviewing, getting building that interview space, all the making sure that they dot their i's and cross their t's in the final interview, to make sure that they find the perfect fit for the job that the client is trying to feel. The next thing that recruiters should spend their time on is negotiating complex offers. So all the offers around, how do we get this? What overtime, everything about offers, what the offer should entail, how long is what's it called, notice period, all those kind of things that come in the offer, right? This should be negotiated by the recruiter. So the recruiter should spend time negotiating this out with the clients and also the candidates, just so they come to a common ground and everybody is happy, right? And the next one will be winning new business contracts. Of course, going out to build relationships with other clients that are trying to hire and bringing new businesses into the company. Those are the things that I think are very important to build and scale a recruitment agency. And these are the things that recruiters should actually spend their time on, because the one thing that every business wants to do is scale and grow. So of course, it's just makes sense that you spend a whole lot of your time, if not all of your time, on those kind of things that will actually help grow and scale the business. In the other side, the things that I don't think that recruiters should spend their time on, number one is reading hundreds of irrelevant CVs. So of course, when you post like a job or maybe your job board on your website, you're going to have at least a ton of applications. So let's say 10, 20, 10 10 is an understatement. I mean, you're going to have at least 150, or let's say 50. Realistically, you can do 50, or for the ones that the jobs are really like, the offer is juicy, you can get as high as 100, right? But most of the times, at least 90%, or let's even say 70%, right? Realistically, 70% of those CVs are irrelevant. So I do not think that a recruiter should spend their time reading hundreds of those CVs and going through the 70% that is irrelevant, right? I do not also think that a recruiter should spend time copying and pasting candidates data, because sometimes you can see a CV that is good but not for the job that you already have, and some recruiters have candidates come in and drop their details, and they get added to their database, and when a new job comes around, they can be among those that will be scanned through to see if they're a good fit for the job. So with this kind of data, of course, they'll present it, and what the recruiter has to do is copy it and paste into the database, which is something I do not think a recruiter should spend time doing, because if you have like 100 details of candidates that are looking for a job in your coming to your company to get a job, so that means you're going to spend probably the entire day transferring that information into your database, which is a waste of time. I do not think that recruiters should do that. The next thing I don't think recruiters should do is just chasing down emails back and forth. Like say, you send an email to a candidate to schedule an interview, and maybe for some reason they didn't see it or they have not responded. You have to go back and follow up on them and tell them final warning before we move on to other candidates. That is something I don't think a recruiter should spend time doing. And another thing is coordinating basic meeting schedules. Like I said, you have to build relationships with clients and customers, and sorry, not customers in this case, candidates, right? So you have to build relationship with candidates. But one thing I wouldn't want a recruiter to spend time doing is coordinating those basic meetings that we are going to be having. So there is no need to be the one to coordinate it, right? And another thing is manually updating a CRM or an ATS spreadsheet. So there is no need for us to be the ones to manually do this. Um, so let's look at the administrative trap that a lot of recruiting agencies currently have, and where most of their time goes into. So, like you can see here, this is what a typical job from the. Of course, I speak to a lot of recruitment agencies. So, from the recruitment agencies that I've spoken to, this is what a typical, internal operation looks like. So, a job comes in, they post it, right? Website and LinkedIn, wherever they post it. The next thing is applications start rolling in, right? Someone sees it, things they fit into, the job description, that's the JD, and they send the applications, right? What now happens next? Manual CV reviews. Manual CV reviews. These CVs are manually reviewed one by one, right? And once we are now finally done reviewing and shortlisting our final candidates, we now have to email them and tell them that, oh, you can schedule your interview here. Either we give them our available time for the interview, or we give them like a calendar link to book an interview, and then we continue to chase them, maybe follow up on them once or twice to be sure that they're not actually interested before we can maybe move on or drop them and then move on with other candidates. And then when, of course, a lot of times we come in with scheduling as well. We have to manually go in and schedule an interview. If we are telling them, this is our free time, pick one of these times. That means that once they pick and respond to us with the time that works for them, we have to go in and schedule that interview, and then we also have to go in and sync our ATS. So, as a recruiter, which of these steps actually require human judgment? I will let you be the judge of that. So let's go to the next slide, which is the ultimate bottle hack that I see in a lot of recruitment agencies. Number one is CV screening. If I own the recruiting agency, this is my first target, and this is the first thing that I would redesign immediately. And this is of course not because recruiters cannot read CVs or resumes, but it's because they have to do this over and over and over again, and it is fundamentally repetitive, and it is not something that we can scale at the end of the day, because the only way we can scale manual CV screening is by hiring more and more and more and more recruiters, which is not sustainable as in the long run, right? So, and if we are even being honest, if the recruiters are manually reviewing a CV or manually screening a CV, as they continue to go, the quality drops, right? So the recruiter comes in very energetic in the morning, reviews the first one, takes time. And by the time the recruiter gets to the 58th one, they're already tired. They're not looking at it again. They're just, and that's it, right? Because they're already tired and their brain is overwhelmed, right? So that is just them reviewing with the exact baseline. So they're reviewing with, okay, what experience does, where has this person work? Okay, close, and the next thing. So at the end of the day, same baseline, exact same thing over and over again, right? So we are looking at, does this person have the right, tenure in business? Does this person match the core technical specifications that we are trying to get in the company? Are they what they call? So that's what, most of the times the recruiter is looking for, and plus other things that the job also entails. So the baseline of what the recruiter is looking for in every CV is already there, right? So doing that over and over and over again works the brain and overstimulates the brain. Of course, I've talked about the first thing that I would redesign. So now let's talk about the things that I would never redesign in a recruitment agency. In my recruitment agency, of course. Yeah. So the first one is the final hiring decisions. I would never automate this, and I would never rework this. I would always have put a recruiter, because of course I know that the computers cannot get the intangible culture fit, which is why I spoke about building relationships with the candidates yourself, because spending time building relationships with the candidates, because with this you can be able to find cultural fit, and physical, and a lot of all those other things as well, right? So the final hiring decisions, I would never automate that. There has to always be a recruiter that finally makes the decision of hiring or firing. Yeah, hiring a candidate. Let's not talk about firing. So the next one is the high context candidate conversations. So is listening and mapping candidate aspirations must be authentic or stay authentic, which again reiterates on my point of building relationships yourself with these candidates. The next one is building client relationships. Of course, consultative trust is built peer to peer and not via algorithmic interactions, because of course once a client sees that your second message was from a bot, the third message was from a bot, they're going to get tired. That they're going to be like, what? I don't think I want to deal again. So it is important that you take out time to manually build relationships with this client yourself, peer to peer, right? And the last one is offer, salary, and negotiations. Of course, I already spoke about this. This is something that a recruiter should have to handle themselves. So I would never ever automate this, right? Because here's the thing: technology should not replace judgment. It should remove the repetitive tasks so that people have more time to use their judgment. So now that we have talked about the things that I would never automate, let's talk about the things that I would automate. The first one is going to be the first stage screening. So that first stage screening where they run instant, checks to filter the criteria so that recruiters so the first thing would be that first stage screening where they run the screening and matching criteria, filter matching criteria of the candidates and all of that I would automate, because there is already a baseline of what you are looking for. Here is what you are looking for, so all the CVs will either fit into what you are looking for or they don't, right? So we can automate that and make sure that we are only looking at the CVs at the end of the day that already fits into the baseline that we want. So maybe we have 100 CVs, right? When we automate the first stage screening, we will be able to cut it down to 50 good CVs that we can actually work with. The next one will be the coordinated booking. So we automate like instant reminders and then self-booking interfaces. So once we see that a candidate is a good fit, we send them maybe like a calendar link or something, some sort of link that will allow them to see the hiring managers in what's it called, free slots. And once they are able to see the hiring manager's free slot, they can pick the time that best fits them, and then we remind them up until we have the interview with them. The next one is going to be the synchronized updates, which is like the auto update candidates information when we are done with an interview, and then we update that. It should show on our dashboard, and then we also our ATS as well we should be able to instantly update that. So these three actions, you can drop it, you can these three broad actions, you can drop it down into these individual actions, which is one, CV screening, I already spoke about. Interview scheduling, already talked about. Candidate updates, also spoken about. Calendar bookings, follow-up emails, data entry, reminder emails. So these three things fall into all of these tasks, right? Or all of these tasks fall into these three broad ones. So those are the tasks that I would obviously automate in my agency. So here is what my dream workflow would look like. So on the right, you have what we currently do, what most agencies currently do, and on the left, you have, wait, this is my right, yeah? I don't even know what. So on my left, right, we have what is currently obtainable in a lot of recruitment agencies, and on my right, we have what I would build in my own recruitment agency. So what happens right now is that when applications come in, the recruiter reads everything and then manually schedules an interview and then also takes care of the hiring process. But what I would do would be applications come in, we have the automated screening layer, and then we have the recruiter strategic call, and eventually takes care of the hiring process. This will look like the same, but execution is actually not the same, because the recruiter spends so much time in this red dotted box here reading through everything, but in here the recruiter spends less time reading here. And as you can see, you would notice something here. I didn't remove the recruiter, I just removed the manual and the repetitive work that was happening in the process. And all in all, I don't think that recruitment agencies have like a hiring problem. I just feel like a lot of agencies have an operations problem. Because here is the thing, I believe that there are still great recruiters out here. The issue is that a lot of them spend a significant part of their week on repetitive admin tasks that really does not add anything to, anything of value to scaling the business, right? So instead of them wasting 3 hours scanning 300 messy CVs. Imagine they will wake up in the morning and only have like the top 20 pre-screen CVs that they would have to read through that day. Of course, it saved them a lot more time, and at the end of the day, they will now have some time left to, like I said, build relationships, do things, strategic things, go out, have meetings that will actually bring growth to the business and bring more business deals. So this, of course, brings a rapid client turnaround and a high, and of course brings a higher candidate placement satisfaction, because when a candidate feels seen, feels spoken to, doesn't feel ghosted because the recruiter was reviewing CVs, that will make the candidates more satisfied and talk to their friends about the agency, and also tell a lot of people about the agency and be like, oh, these people are always very nice, they're always talking to me and all of that. And you can only have that if you're not spending time on repetitive tasks. But anyways, this is just me just sharing my thoughts. I actually don't own an agency, but I'm just obsessed with operational systems and how they scale. And this channel right here is where I test, construct, and share live workflows with agency owners globally. Because every workflow to me should tell a story about how a business thinks, right? A business that is intentional about its growth, you would see it in the kind of workflows they use in the company. I'm documenting what I'm learning as I study about recruitment agency processes, build systems, and talk to more agency owners. And of course, my opinions might change as I continue to learn more. But yeah, this was just like an out loud, thought process. So you might want to stick around to see more flows or more, communications that I have with recruitment agencies and in times to come, and maybe subscribe to this channel.